Hey everybody, it's Emily from Schooling, and today I'm going to give you my April TBR. I have a lot of material that I need to get through in the month of April. Most of it is for grade 10 because I have to get that done. That has to be done. It has to be done. I am on a tight schedule. So I don't have all of the books because I just bought a few. So my TBR is insane, basically. So I have a lot of books to read. I'm going to start with the one that has nothing to do with grade 10. So the book I was supposed to read in March but could not finish was Columbine by Dave Cullen. I picked this for the Read Like a Mom book club, and it didn't work out in March. I had a busy month with travel and with a lot of work on grade 10 and with preparing for that. I have a lot of projects I'm juggling. Excuses, I know, but I didn't get through this book, and I also had a hard time it's upsetting, especially since I just started sending my boys to school part-time, so now I've got that in my head, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit, I gotta say. What I'm finding interesting about it, though, is that a lot of the things that I thought I knew about Columbine are not true, and that's a little bit surprising because I was just out of high school when this happened. I graduated in '98, so I remember this pretty vividly, and I thought I knew a lot about it already, but clearly I did not. So I'm learning a lot from this about what actually happened, which is very interesting to read about, and how the media can misconstrue things unintentionally sometimes, and so yeah, I'm very interested to finish this. So we are going to be reading that again this month. So if you want to join in with us in the Read Like a Mom book club, we'll be finishing up Columbine this month. And I hope not too many of you finished it, so I don't feel as bad for holding things back, but I promise a new book in May. Another book that I'll be reading in the month of April that I can't really show you because I don't want to lose my place because it's on my Kindle is I started Dr. Sleep in the last couple weeks of March. I've been wanting to read Dr. Sleep for forever. It's the sequel to The Shining that's by Stephen King, and I've had it on my Kindle for like a year because I just kept meaning to get to it and it just kept getting pushed over maybe next month, and so I'm reading it. I'm about 35% of the way through, and so far I'm enjoying it. It's interesting to read about Danny Torrance as an adult, but it's also kind of depressing. So I'll talk more about that in my wrap-up later in the month. Okay, now the rest of the books I have in my pile are for grade 10. And there's a few that I don't have yet that I'll be reading, hopefully. I'm hoping to get this stuff done in April. I would really like to have all the books finalized by like mid-May, so that's the goal. So I'm finishing up the third Cartoon History of the Universe. This one covers the rise of Islam through the early Renaissance, and as I've already read half of it, and I really like the series. I think it's a solid resource for history, especially for people who don't think they like history. I just think that this is a really great way to get someone into history. So we're going to be using those as a spine. I have a whole bunch of books, but I'm just going to give you a run through. I picked up Mother of the Believers, a novel of the birth of Islam. This is by Kamran Pasha, I think, and I did a lot of research on different books about historical fiction about the rise of Islam, and this one had the best reviews, so I'm hoping it's really good. It's a big book. I'm like, ugh, I was not expecting it to be quite that big. I probably should have paid more attention to page numbers. This is not the first time I've done that. But it looks to be interesting. It's about one of his wives. I think it's written from the perspective of Muhammad's favorite wife, possibly. So she's retelling the story of her husband, Muhammad, and how all of that happened. I've been doing a lot of reading about Islam, and so I'm hoping to really enjoy this book. And I love that it's told from a female perspective, because I think that's such a male-dominated society and history, so it's good to get another side. I also have Under Heaven by Guy Gavra Kay in my pile. This is a sort of historical fantasy about the Tang Dynasty in China. He takes a real place and he kind of puts his own spin on it. And I've been wanting to read Guy Gavra Kay for forever. I hear he's amazing, and I've never read him before. So I'm really hoping that I'm going to enjoy this. And I think it will probably be in grade 10. Because I've had this in my TBR for a while now, and I've been dying to read it, and I knew that there was going to be Norse Viking material covered in history. We're going to read Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman. I have been excited about this book for a while. I'm a little bit obsessed with the Vikings. I've been watching the series on TV, and I've always found them fascinating, and I've wanted to read more, and I've been looking for books to research more on Vikings when I have the time. But I bought this when it came out. I pre-ordered it because I was so excited. Like, it was just so serendipitous that this was coming out as I was looking for more information on Vikings. So I'm excited to get to it, and it's probably going to be in grade 10 because I would like to include something by Neil Gaiman somewhere, and I thought this would be a better fit than American Gods, because that was my other, I was like, maybe American Gods, but I don't know, that's kind of too much for high school. I don't know if it's worthy of study, but I love that book. But I thought this might be better, so I'm going to hopefully have time for this. I also, in my pile, have Bernard Cornwell's Agincourt. I've already read this book. I read it a couple of years ago, and it was one of my favorite books ever. One of my favorite historical fiction books. I think Bernard Cornwell just has this way of bringing everything to life in such a vivid way. He really, like, puts you there, and I love that his books, especially this book, rather than focusing on the players, the major players of the 100 Years' War, the kings and the nobles and all of that, he puts you in the place of an ordinary person and what their experiences were like. So you really get to feel what that time period would be like. And so, yeah, I love this book. So this is definitely going to be in grade 10. It's a little bit gritty because that time period is a little bit gritty. So, I mean, yeah. So I think it's going to be perfect fit. The last book in my pile, I am sort of on the fence about. I want to include it, but I don't know if it'll fit. I have to read it first. It's been on my TBR for a really long time. I bought this a couple of years ago to read with my oldest, and we just never quite got to it. And that is The Years of Rice and Salt by Kim Stanley Robinson. This is another author that I've heard great things, but I have never read. And so I'm really excited to pick this up. This is a alternate history. Basically, the premise is when the plague hit Europe in the real world, a large percentage of people were taken out, and Europe had to sort of restructure because of that. But this poses the question, rather than a third of the population, which is what actually happened, a third of the population of Europe was decimated. But this poses the question that what if instead 99% of the population of Europe had been decimated by the plague? What if it was catastrophic? How would that have changed history? And it's really interesting. That's a really interesting question, and I love stuff like that. So it's very speculative, and it talks about the Black Death a little bit, I believe, but it kind of like, what would Europe have become if there was hardly anyone left, and the people that came in were probably the Ottomans, I imagine. And so Europe kind of, Christianity dies off, and the Ottomans come in and take over, and Islam becomes the major religion. And it's a really interesting question, and I think it fits pretty well with the stuff being studied in grade 10, so that's the goal. I have a couple of history books I just bought because I realized I had some big gaps to fill, because the problem with using graphic novels as the spine is it moves a really fast pace, so I gotta stop every now and then and fill in with some other books. So I already have A World Lit by Fire, which I'm hoping to use, and that's by William Manchester, because I've heard good things about it. And I like that he takes a little bit of a skeptical view of religion in the time period and how it held back so much, because that's often overlooked in history, but the church really held back science in that time period. Stuff could have progressed much faster. If you look at the history of the Arab world and you look at the history of China, they were so much more advanced than Europe was at that time period because they weren't afraid of science the way the Christian world was. So I think this might have some interesting things to say about that. But I have a couple other books coming. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we're going to try. So that is what I plan to read in the month of April. And I don't know, we'll see what happens. So do you have any books that you're hoping to get to this month? I'd love to hear about it down below in the comments. We can chat. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye!